Okay, so we're now live in summer, and
yeah, we are live. Actually, we got about 19 guests. Maybe we'll start in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, just to give some time, in UAE it's evening. People are in the traffic. Some people are enjoying tea, coffee.
Yes, that's right. I always have to, even now, probably still have to negotiate the traffic, which is always busy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're slowly getting traffic now. Actually, now last almost 9 to 12 months, we have less traffic now. Again, coming up with the normal days.
Yes. Yeah.
Because online topics, we have a YouTube channel as well, no? So the crowd will divide between the different platforms.
Yes. Yeah.
Some people will go YouTube, some people will be on the Zoom,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We've been using Teams for many of our presentations, and also a little bit of Zoom, and the other one I think is GoToMeeting.
Yeah, the GoToMeeting, yes.
Yeah. And yeah, we've all adjusted very quickly to this new way of working, haven't we? We've had to.
Yeah.
But I think we're all looking forward to getting together in person again at some time hopefully in the not too distant future.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, but people will more habituated with online sessions rather than physical sessions.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's good to be able to record the sessions and make them available for people to use later on.
Good. In another minute we'll start. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just waiting for you to give me the nod, and I'll start.
Samad, just for your info, I also stopped my video just to keep myself with a name.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Where is your office in UK? London?
Our office is in Sevenoaks in Kent, which is probably about 20 miles or so from the capital city, London.
Oh.
But
yeah, let us start then. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to our May CPD talk. Today, our guest speaker is from UK Cares from London. He is CEO of UK Cares. Most of you may be knowing UK Cares is a certification and authorization company for the structural materials, namely steels, particularly, which is a PT and reinforced steels. Yeah. So just to invite today's, actually our IST region has associated with a sponsor from today's topic. Our sponsors for this year, we call it a golden sponsor, is a Tech Assist, is a sole agent for the Idea Statica, which is connection design software. Thank you for their association with us. It's a connection design for the steel and RCC. I understand PT. Very good software for that. Many structuralists are using it. Thank you, Mr. Prakash, and thank you, Idea Statica, for associating with us. Today's session, we expect, I just give a brief introduction about our speaker, and after the CPD talk, we have a Q&A session. If time permits, I'll request Prakash to present about their basic products of structural softwares, whatever they have actually. So to introduce, I should say thank you to Mr. Lee and Mr. Ladin, who are from UK Case. Mr. Lee Brankley is CEO of UK Case. About him is he has joined UK Case 25 years back as a quite good experience with UK Case. And currently is CEO from last, I think 5 years. And before that, he's a general manager of the company. And he developed systems and design development of implementation of digital tools for the company. He's very active in implementing digitalization for the UK case. With my brief introduction, Mr. Lee, please take over the platform. See you. All the best. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. And thank you very much, first of all, to our sponsors of the event, Tech Assist, and also thank you very much to iInstructee for giving us the opportunity to present to you and continuing the relationship that we've now developed over many years. I was just saying to Samar before we started, we presented to iInstructee probably 5 or 6 years ago. So our relationship goes back quite some time. So I would like to present to you the CARES approach to delivering a digitally assured steel reinforcement supply chain. And as Sama introduced me, my name is Lee Brankley. I am the CEO of CARES, and I also have over 30 years experience in the steel and construction sector. And what I always like to start with these sorts of presentations is to really look at what is the engineer's view, and from our perspective, what is the customer's view of where the industry is going and the challenges that the industry is now facing, and how can we work with all stakeholders across the industry to ensure that the supply chain is able to meet the needs of the industry in the most effective and the most efficient way. So I've taken this quote from Arabs, and it comes from a piece that they published a little while ago called Perspectives by Sankar S. Villapuram. And it talks about intelligent buildings and smarter industry. And as we know that one of the constants of construction is that change is always occurring, and we're always looking to innovate and improve on how we're doing things and how we can take the industry forward. And I think that the biggest opportunity ahead of all of us at the present time is to look at how we can digitalize our own processes and how we can connect our digital processes with other digital initiatives across the whole supply chain. And I'll talk in much more detail about that throughout the presentation. But first of all, I want to also go back and look at where we currently are and what has happened across our industry, both in the UK and elsewhere in the world, and how we can learn lessons where things haven't worked out as well as perhaps they should have done in a number of cases. And then also, really that sort of brings our attention to a number of construction sector inquiries that have taken place, for example, in the UK in relation to the Grenfell Tower, which many of you may be familiar with, was a fire that took the lives of over 70 people, and has really been a wake-up call to the whole of the industry to really ask ourselves those searching questions of what are we doing to ensure that our structures are both structurally safe and sound, but also more importantly, how do we ensure that the structures are safe for when the users, the people that live in those buildings in particular, how do we ensure their safety? So that is going to be, has been an event that has changed the whole culture of the UK industry. And, we are now looking at a number of different changes across how products are specified, how they're marketed, how they're certified, and how the information relating to those products is shared across the whole supply chain. And that is once again moving towards a sort of digital environment. There have been other instances in the Opal Tower, for example, in Australia, and there was an incident with the MTR Sha Tin Central Station in Hong Kong. And we follow these inquiries very closely and look to see what we can learn and how we can do things better. And in particular in the UK, we are now seeing a change in regulatory regime. There is going to be a new building safety bill that is really going to embed the lessons that have been learnt from that Grenfell Tower tragedy. And one of the key things from that is a requirement for providing the information about the product in digital format, and they refer to that as the golden thread of information. Also, I think we are now seeing a recognition that we really do need to start addressing the global challenge of climate change. We have been talking about it for over 10 years now before we introduced our first sustainability scheme and started raising the issue of sustainability, in particular the carbon footprint of products. But how much progress have we made since then, which unfortunately I have to say is probably not as much as we should have done. But I think now, as we start to emerge from the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, many governments around the world are now investing in new infrastructure, and we need to hold them to account to build back better, build back faster, and build back greener, and we can make a contribution to that. Also, the other important thing about the connection between the supply chain and the construction site and the products that are incorporated in those structures is to enable the transmission of information in relation to the product and the certification information as well across the whole supply chain, because we have seen a number of fake data scandals for Kobe Steel, for example. There's a shocking incident there of falsifying test records. We've also seen it with VW with the emissions scandal. And even as recent as the last couple of months in the UK, we actually saw a counterfeit CARES certificate of approval. Unfortunately, the engineer was alert enough and aware to call the CARES office and check the authenticity of that particular certificate, and we found it was actually a sort of counterfeit. So that was quite a long introduction, but the contents of my presentation are going to look very much at CARES, a little bit more about our activities in the organisation, and then talk in more detail about the actions that we take away from the construction site in the supply chain to ensure the product quality is what it should be, and then provide you some detail about our sustainability scheme and the contribution that we're making to addressing that challenge of climate change. And then more recently, over the last couple of years, we have accelerated our own digital adoption in the sense that we've had to adopt these new ways of working very quickly as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we see that there are real opportunities for us to accelerate that digitalisation of CARES as an organisation, but also the digitalisation of the reinforcement value chain as well. But firstly, just a little bit about CARES. We started in 1983, and it was a joint initiative between government industry to provide confidence to the users and purchasers of reinforcing steel through a regime of regular third-party regulation, testing and inspection. And that was our aim back then, 40 years ago, and it remains our aim today, and I think it will always be our aim in the future, that CARES is here. We only exist to provide confidence to the users of the products that are certified by CARES and provide that trust in the supply chain that delivers those products to the construction site. And we believe that CARES is a unique relationship across the whole of the reinforcing steel value chain. And we have 4 key stakeholder groups that are part of CARES and are represented through our policy advisory committee to enable us to set the technical requirements for our schemes. And in that way, we match the capabilities of the reinforcing steel supply chain with the needs of the clients and particularly the consultants. So we have the 4 stakeholder groups represented within the CARES policy-making body, and they come together to establish the technical requirements within our auditors audit the companies in the supply chain too. And they represent the clients and the specifiers, consultants, contractors and manufacturers. So they have balanced representation such that one part of the industry doesn't dictate to the others. And we believe over the 40 years of CARES existence, that has been a unique partnership, has enabled us to set the requirements at the correct level and keep taking the industry forward in a positive direction. The conformity assessment services that we provide are very much based around what we call our product certification scheme. And that focuses very much on the reinforcing steel standards. BS 449, for example, is widely used in the UAE, but also the ASTM standards. And more recently, we have been certifying to standards used in Hong Kong and Singapore. And it's important to note that the CARES certification covers the whole supply chain. We need to look at not just the manufacturer of the reinforcing steel, but also the processor. And the processor will cut and bend the reinforcing steel to the British standard BS 666 before they supply it onto the construction site. And we also have a technical approval scheme for mechanical couplers, and also we have a scheme for the welding of reinforcing steel. which is becoming more widely used, particularly in the UK and in other markets as well, to provide much better consistency of products such as power cages, beams, columns, diaphragm walls, and enables then those to be delivered to a construction site and assembled on site to reduce the labour required on site. As I mentioned, we have our sustainability scheme, which started approximately sort of 12 years ago, and that probably remains the only sector certification scheme accredited to BS 8902, which is the British standard for certification bodies providing sustainability certification. And one of the key features of our sustainability scheme is we have a product carbon footprinting tool and also the ability to provide an environmental product declaration to the European standard. And we also provide responsible sourcing certification to BS 6001 as well. And CARES, we are the auditing body, or we check the manufacturer's capability and the fabricators, but who checks CARES? Well, CARES is also audited by a number of accreditation bodies in the UK, that is UCAS, the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, but also in Singapore, we're audited by the Singapore Accreditation body as well. And they audit us to those two international accreditation standards mentioned there, one for product conformity, 17065, and the other for our management system certification to 17021. So what has been our recipe for success over those last 40 years? It's very much based around our industry experience and expertise. All of the CARES auditing staff are from the steel industry, so they understand the product, the manufacturing processes, and how the product is used across the whole value chain. And we also have a unique approach to auditing, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a moment. So and by that stakeholder engagement with clients, consultants, contractors, and the manufacturers, we have the ability to make change happen in a controlled way across the whole of the reinforcing steel supply chain. And for that reason, CARES has been specified in major projects throughout the world, from the late 80s to the present day. And as you can see there in the middle of this slide, the Burj Khalifa there, where CARES is specified for the reinforcing steel and also the mechanical couplers that was incorporated in that particular structure, which I believe is still the tallest building in the world. And just now to move on to the three aspects of CARES, what is it that we do to provide the assurance of product quality, and why can you have more trust in a CARES approved product compared to other construction products? And we believe that it's through our unique approach to auditing that provides that extra level of confidence. And also we have a very high level of product testing, which includes independent testing as well, which I'll talk about in a moment. And we also have a unique CARES traceability system. But firstly, our approach to auditing. To be able to provide that confidence in the product and also the trust in the supply chain, the CARES audit of a manufacturer of reinforcing steel, for example, consists of these three elements. During the course of an audit of a manufacturer, the CARES auditors will be on site for at least 10 man days to assess the company against the ISO 9001 management system, but also the product take samples of the product and witness the testing of that product in the manufacturer's test laboratory. And during that process, we will also ensure that the machines that are used for testing that product are calibrated, and those calibration certificates are traceable to national standards. So our emphasis is first and foremost on the product and the compliance of the product to the standard. And then clearly manufacturing processes, a number of complex manufacturing processes are used to make that reinforcing steel product, and they have to be properly controlled. And that is done by having management systems in place and the management committing to the quality of the product throughout all its manufacturing stages. And during the course of that 10-person day audit, I should say, the lead auditor maintains a balance between these three aspects, focusing on the product, the processes that makes the product, and then the systems that underpin the organization's sort of control mechanisms as well. And if we balance those three, approximately a third of the time spent on each one, then we believe that provides the confidence in the level of compliance of the product with the standard, and equally as important, the trust in the whole supply chain as well. So in terms of the product testing, as I mentioned there, we undertake extensive product testing. So for example, if a manufacturer applies to CARES for approval, they will make an application for a particular standard, in this case BS 449 2005, and a grade, the B500B grade, the type of product, whether it's coil or bar, in this case bar, and then they will apply for approval to a particular size range, in this case 10 millimeters up to 40 millimeters. And then during the course of the audit, the CARES auditors will select a number of samples from the 10 millimeter production, the 25 millimeter and the 40 millimeter production. And we will take 10 samples from 3 casts of 10 millimeter, 3 casts of 25 and 3 casts of 40 millimeter, totaling 90 samples. And then those 90 samples are tested under witness conditions of the CARES auditor in the manufacturer's laboratories, and then duplicate samples are sent to an independent UCAS accredited laboratory for further testing. And then the 2 sets of results are submitted to the CARES scheme manager, who reviews the results to determine whether or not they comply with the requirements of the standard. So it's a very, very rigorous test of the manufacturer to get the CARES approval in the first place. And then once they achieve the CARES approval, they are audited every 6 months thereafter. And other sizes of the product are taken from that approved size range. So in this case, if there's initially approved for 10 to 40 millimeter, at the very first audit, they would probably sample 16 or 20 millimeter, for example, and we'd cover the whole size range over a period of time. So it's an ongoing commitment to quality by the manufacturer with a very rigorous auditing regime associated with it, providing that very highest level of confidence. And then if we look now closely at a certificate of approval that is issued to a manufacturer, you can see there at the top of the certificate, we've now introduced a static QR code, and that provides us with the ability of using the CARES Cloud app to scan that static QR code and verify whether or not that's a valid certificate. Because as I mentioned earlier on, it's becoming a little bit too easy to create sort of counterfeit certificates. So whenever you're specifying the CARES approval, you need to get the certificate from the manufacturer and the processor and scan that static QR code just to make yourself absolutely sure that it is an authentic CARES certificate, because that goes automatically to the CARES Cloud database and will give you in real time verification that it's a CARES approved certificate. And then uniquely for a construction product as well, we introduced a marking system for each individual piece of reinforcing steel bar. So this bar mark, as we call it, appears at least once every 1.5 meters on each individual piece of rebar from that CARES approved manufacturer. And that marking starts with the CARES mark, the dot dash dot. The country is the next part of the marking, and then the final part is the mill. So it really is as simple as 1, 2, 3. Look for the CARES mark, the number of 3 elements to it: the environmental element, the economic element, and the social element. And as you can see from this diagram, the environmental, social, and economic issues are numerous in number. In fact, we collect data from over 80, I think, key performance indicators. But one of the ones that you may be particularly interested in is the environmental product declaration, which includes the carbon footprint, or what we generally refer to as the global warming potential as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. So actually, this is where I sort of like to ask all of us collectively, particularly now in relation to climate change, the challenge about this is a quote made some years ago from a leading engineer, and he basically asked the question of all of us. We should be asking: is our design the most carbon efficient? Because we should be looking through the lens of carbon now for all of our future designs. But sadly, I mean, that question was asked, back in 2008, as I mentioned at the beginning. Unfortunately, I don't believe we've made as much progress as we should. But as we approach now the intergovernmental conference that's coming up in Glasgow later this year, called COP26, there's going to be, there's a whole new renewal around embracing and looking at all of our designs from a carbon perspective. And fortunately, because CARES introduced this scheme over 10 years ago, then that data in relation to the carbon footprint from the reinforcing steel from those CARES approved producers is readily available. And just looking a little bit more closely at the environmental product declaration, you have to draw the system boundary, which in the case of reinforcing steel covers the transport from raw materials, the steel making and casting, the rolling operations, and then the transport to the processor, processing by the processor, delivery to site, installation and use. So it covers the whole life cycle of the reinforcing steel product. And then what does the EPD look like? Well, this EPD is taken from the BRE sort of website, BRE Green Book Live, where we can go and obtain all of the CARES EPDs. And this is a particularly useful one because this is what we call a sector average EPD. So it takes a number of manufacturers of the same reinforcing steel product, use the same manufacturing process, in this case, scrap-based electric arc furnace production. So you can identify what a typical value is for that particular steel making route and for that reinforcing steel product. And you can use that as a benchmark to compare and use for your initial design, and that information is sort of readily available to you. And also, we've as with all of our schemes, we regularly review and update their technical requirements from time to time. And we've recently launched a new version of the scheme, which will provide a summary performance of certificate, looking at the product quality, the environmental aspects, the social aspects, and the economic aspects. And also a further element of sustainability is the local culture. What is the company doing to promote and protect the culture, the heritage, and the local languages, etc. And that's really important because we know that the steel manufacturers and the communities where they're located are really the heartbeat of those local communities in terms of the value they bring in terms of career opportunities and really good jobs for the people that work at the steel companies. And then our third leg is around digital transformation. What are we doing as CARES to try and facilitate the adoption of digital working across the whole of the reinforcing steel supply chain? So we have taken a technology-driven approach based on our sort of leadership across the industry, and it's one of those areas that really does need creative thinking, innovation, but most importantly, collaboration. Because when we want to provide the information to others in the supply chain, we have to ensure that there are proper rules in place and protocols about sharing the information. And I mentioned earlier on that in many other sectors, there is the ability to see exactly what product or component was installed in that particular structure. But unfortunately for the construction sector, it isn't yet possible to be able to do that. But one of the important things moving forward will be this what we call the digital golden thread of information, which will be the product test results for a particular batch of steel rebar that has been made and then travels across the supply chain and used on a particular project, and we'll be making that available through our digital traceability system. Because at the moment, you're probably seeing lots of these paper-based documents being passed around, whether it's what was referred to a mill test certificate there in the bottom left, or a reinforcement bar schedule. So we're probably still seeing faxed schedules, emailed schedules, and all things in between. So what we have been working on over the last couple of months is to try and better understand the reinforcing steel process, and then how that is developed across sort of three core three main processes. The first one that we have to do is to ensure that the building is constructed in a way that it satisfies the design codes, the workmanship standards, and the products such as rebar are in compliance with the particular standards that they have been made to. And they are what we refer to as the sort of governing process, which here are shown in these blue boxes. And as you can see, those governing processes appear at a number of stages in the sort of process. And you can also see the complexity of this as well. So we have broken down the process into what we call enabling processes and core processes. So the enabling processes in the sort of reddish brown color on this diagram are really information being shared across a number of different organizations involved in that particular project, from the scheme design, the material specification, passing that on to the main contractor, who then goes through the procurement process. But it's really about information being passed from one party to another. And it's, at the present time, it's being passed in a number of different formats, paper, some digital. So it's a real sort of hybrid process. And then once that contracts are let and start to procure the rebar, then that moves across into these sort of core, and what we call the core enabling processes, which are the actual manufacture of the rebar itself, transport to the particular fabricator who cuts and bends it, and then transports it to the site. And as you can see there, once again, in the blue boxes, it's important that the manufacturer is approved to produce to the material standard, BS 749 in this case, and also that the processor is CARES approved for the processing of the rebar to the BS 866 standard, because it's absolutely essential that there's an unbroken chain from the manufacturer through to the fabricator, through to the delivery onto site, installation on site, and then the documentation handed over at the handover stage for the use of the building. And then the building comes to end of life. You can look at repurposing it, recycling, demolition, recycle, and it goes back then through the steel is recovered and can be used as the raw material for another batch of steel in the future. And from this, you can just see how complex the whole process is, how many parties are involved. And we believe CARES can contribute by bringing together those those four stakeholder groups. And now we're also engaging with digital partners as well to bring the technology to the various parts of that process to make it operate much more efficiently and pass the information digitally from one to another rather than using these paper-based systems. So this is a really exciting project that we're currently working on. And just to look at that in a slightly different way, the CARES digital supply chain is looking really at the steel maker, the manufacturer, and the steel fabricator. Already, we have developed what we call the CARES upstream cloud, which is for the manufacturer to upload the test data in relation to the products that they're releasing under the CARES product conformity scheme. And when they upload that data, it also goes through a validation process to just provide, once again, that higher level of assurance that any product, reinforcing steel product that carries the CARES marks, has been through this additional validation process and its results are available from the upstream cloud. And then currently under development is what we call the CARES downstream cloud, and that's the reinforcement fabricator who receives the physical material from the manufacturer and then processes that into cut and bent material before they deliver it to the construction site. And during that fabrication process, the fabricator is required then to use the downstream cloud to make the relationship between the construction site, which is effectively the bar mark schedule, and going down the supply chain, but then going up the supply chain, then we're able to make the relationship between the individual cast or batch of reinforcing steel and the results that are available from the CARES upstream cloud. So that would make the process much more efficient, much more robust, and much more reliable and trustworthy. As I mentioned earlier on, we have the ability now to undertake a digital authenticity check by scanning the static QR code on the CARES certificates of approval. And why is that necessary? Well, because we have seen fake certificates emerging in the UK market. As I said, fortunately, when it was presented, the person it was presented to was aware of CARES and was aware to phone the office and determine that that was actually a fake certificate. And then the other thing we can do now as well, with the static QR code, it is also going to be available on each individual label from the manufacturer of the reinforcing steel, and also the processor, the reinforcement processor of that reinforcement steel. So when it arrives on site, you can scan that static QR code, determine who supplied it and what their scope of approval was at that particular time. And then just to emphasize, the traceability system, yes, it is really as simple as 1, 2, 3, CARES, the country, the mill, and then you can be confident that that rebar will have the highest level of assurance in relation to its compliance with the particular standard. And by bringing these three aspects together, the product quality, the sustainability, digitalisation, we really can meet the needs of the client to build those safe structures and ensure that the information, the key information relating to the products in those structures is going to be available for the lifetime of that structure. And on this slide, we've shown you a screenshot of the CARES Cloud app, and at the bottom they've got the QR codes where you can scan either the Google Play or the App Store and retrieve the free CARES Cloud app to undertake that authenticity check, but also to undertake that provenance check. Where has that rebar come from, who made it, and what are they approved for in terms of their scope of approval. And I'm very pleased to say that there are a number of CARES approved steel mills and fabricators throughout the UAE, and the steel mills CARES approved are the Emirates Steel Industries, Canares, Metal Supply, Qatar Steel Company, Hemria, Shataf, Gulf Steel Industries, Union Iron Steel, and a number of fabricators have already demonstrated their commitment to quality and want to be accountable for what they do, and really embrace the CARES assured supply chain. That's Seacon Building Materials, Emirates Rebar, and Armanox Middle East for stainless steel rebar, because that's also covered by the CARES scheme. So I've spoken very much about what we can do for you, but what is it that you can do for us? And really to have that highest level of confidence in the product and the supply chain that provided that product, then review your project specification clauses. What are you saying about materials and particularly reinforcement, and what quality assurance do you require for reinforcement? So to ensure you get CARES approved reinforcing steel for your projects, these are the recommended specification terms to use. So all reinforcement shall comply with BS 449 and it shall be cut and bent in accordance with BS 866. And I said the source of the reinforcement, all reinforcement shall be manufactured, processed and supplied by CARES holding a valid CARES product conformity certificate of approval. So as you can see, the manufacturer has to be CARES approved, the processor has to be CARES approved, and then you can have the full confidence in the supply chain. And also, we mentioned here about the sustainability requirements and the traceability system in more detail, and also to embrace the digital construction, specify the CARES Cloud digital traceability platform. And then we have a whole range of other products that we also certify for welding, continuity strips, mechanical couplers, punch and shear reinforcement systems, post-tensioning systems. We're working very closely with Dubai Municipality and other stakeholders there to improve the post-tensioning industry, bring them up to the right standards, and also wire and strand. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be very happy to take any questions that you may have on what I have presented.
Thank you, Lee, for your good presentation. I think we'll wait for the Q&A questions from the attendees till for some time. I request Mr. Prakash, our sponsor of the day for this year for Astruct, to present a couple of slides about his products, and we'll take up Q&A after this session, Mr. Lee. Is it okay?
Okay.
Because I cannot see any questions now. Mr. Prakash, are you available? Can you share your screen if you want to share, or you want to talk just verbal? Prakash, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Sama. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Very good evening to all.
You want to share the
So,
screen? Maybe I think.
yes, sir.
Shall I stop share? Oh,
I think you can see my screen now, right?
Yeah. Maybe you can make it in presentation. It's the small screen. It is now.
Yeah. Is it clear now?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Just 1 minute, Prakash. I request any question and Q&A for UK Cares, Mr. Lee. Please post it into Q&A box, and we'll take up questions after brief presentation. Yeah, please, Prakash.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Firstly, I'd like to thank the whole iStruct team, especially Mr. Sama and Mr. John, for helping us to be a sponsor for this year and for their continuous support since we have decided to be the sponsor with iStruct. And we at TechAssist are basically a software providing company for civil and structural engineers, and we also provide some consulting works for our engineers to optimize their day-to-day tasks. So basically, Idea Statica is one of our major portfolio of products. It's mainly an engineering software dedicated for structural design and code check of joints, cross sections, beams, and other details. So we have almost like 4,000 plus licenses installed, and we are linked to majorly used FEA and CAD programs like SAP, ETABS, Tekla, Revit, and all of them. So we provide basically a free trial which is valid for 2 weeks. So please feel free to download the trial and have a demo. And it's available in our website. And for any further questions or any other further information, you can actually send us an email, and these are my contact details. So I hope it's clear.
Yeah. Thank you, Prakash. Thanks for your time, and
thank you so
thank
much.
you once again for associating with us. Yeah, good. Lee, I think we received some couple of questions. We'll take up the questions now. A question from Mr. BD Pawar. How you manage audit and frequency in COVID situation?
yes, yeah, no, thank you very much. That's a very good question. And actually, when we entered into the sort of COVID pandemic situation last February, we reacted very quickly in conjunction with our national accreditation body, UCAS, and they allowed certification bodies to undertake audits remotely. But in order to do so, the organisations had to demonstrate to UCAS that we had in place adequate training of the auditors about the process they would be using, and also to ensure that there were mechanisms in place to provide the information from the company that we're auditing to us to enable the auditor to verify that things were being done as they should be. And I'm pleased to say that CARES as an organisation responded very quickly and put those new operating practices in place. And we have been able to undertake our regular 6 monthly audits for all the CARES approved companies. And now we certify over 100 producers of reinforcing steel in over 40 countries around the world. And also with the introduction of the CARES upstream cloud, we effectively accelerated our sort of digital transformation process such that even though we couldn't go and audit the companies physically, we would have access to the data related to the products that they're still placing on the market, first certified by CARES. So through that combination of having access to the data, the new auditing regime, we have been able to maintain that same level of confidence in the CARES certification by the remote auditing, during the current situation.
Good. Thank you. There's a question from Mr. Sukesh. With CARES certification, does the material still need to be tested along with the progress of construction works? Meaning, generally people test for based on a specification, they test it for during construction phase, correct? So what do you on that?
Yeah, I think that in the UK, many years ago, the requirement on many construction projects was to still take a sample of the product, the rebar, from the site and send it for independent testing. But then what has happened over in the UK over the last 40 years with CARES certification becoming so well established and so trusted that there is no longer any requirement for sampling and testing from the site. But we recognise that in other markets where CARES is specified voluntarily, such as the UAE, you still have to comply with the local regulatory requirements, which, for example, in the UAE is DCL, and we work very closely with DCL. We have a very good relationship with them, and also the Dubai municipality. And we recognise that as a market sort of transitions from that process of sampling from site to fully embracing the confidence and the recognition of the CARES product certification scheme, that there could still be some limited amount of testing required on site. But over time, we would hope that would no longer be necessary, particularly as we move towards our sort of digital supply chain, such that you in the future, from a CARES approved fabricator, with the permission of the particular mill, because there are sensitivities around sharing data, particularly of a product relating to a particular product, that information would be available, through an app, and then you'll be able to actually see for each individual batch of product, what its actual properties are, and knowing that it's come from a trusted source and an independent source.
Yeah, a question from Arafat. I think he has not seen the slide. Maybe any CARES certified structural steel fabricators in UAE? Structural steel, not rebar. I think you're talking about steel. Yeah.
No, there aren't. No, there aren't any structural steel CARES certified structural steel fabricators in the UAE. But we have from time to time discussed a scheme for structural steel in the UAE with various stakeholders, and I think that as we see in other markets, there is a necessity, to regulate the structural steel sector as there is for the reinforcing steel sector. So that's something that we could look at in the future by engaging with the necessary stakeholders to establish the technical requirements.
Yeah. Okay. A question from Mr. Pawar again. Do you have any example of withdrawal of CARES certificate due to non-compliance? Good question.
That's a very good question. Yes, we have a number of over the years that we've been in operation. We have a number of instances where we have a number of sanctions that we can apply, and the ultimate sort of sanction is withdrawing of a CARES certificate of approval. And it has happened actually in the GCC many years ago, where a reinforcement fabricator initially achieved the CARES approval, but over time, unfortunately, their performance deteriorated. And we had to withdraw that certification, because, as I mentioned in my presentation, the commitment to quality is a continual commitment. You can't just turn it on and turn it off. Once you get the CARES approval, you will be subject to audits every 6 months, and you have to ensure that your level of performance doesn't fall below our expectation and what is required by our scheme requirements.
Question from Mr. Banu Prakash. Generally, how much time it takes to getting a CARES certificate, to grant CARES certificate?
Yeah, for a reinforcing steel manufacturer, the process they go through is to make an application to CARES, and then it's a 2-stage audit process, and that can take, the minimum amount of time is probably realistically about 6 months from the time that the mill applies, and we undertake our audits by taking the samples and doing the testing of those samples. But it has, on occasion, it has taken over sort of 18 months for a particular manufacturer to gain approval, because the testing is so rigorous, and occasionally a manufacturer has not been able to satisfy the requirements of the standard at the first attempt. Therefore, there have been a number of further visits to take further samples once they've made the necessary corrective actions, to do the necessary testing and then comply with the particular standard. So it is, as I say, it's a strategic decision of the organisation to seek the approval, because they have to be determined and they have to demonstrate that they are capable of complying with the standard on a consistent basis.
Okay, good. So I think we are question from my side.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, you have a system-driven certificates. I can see that. How you differentiate from the ISO to you actually? See, ISO also almost in a similar nature.
Yeah.
So first you define the procedure, you comply the procedure. Similarly, you also define the procedure, you're complying it. So how you differentiate from that?
Yeah, the CARES product certification is built on the foundation of the fact that the company also operates an ISO 9001 management system. So during the course of our assessment audit, we audit both to the ISO 9001 management system, and we also take the samples of the product and evaluate the product against that particular product standard. And that's really what provides the ongoing confidence to us by the manufacturer having in place that ISO 9001 quality management system, that they maintain the commitment to ensuring that their systems and processes are effective, and they are sampling the product at the correct frequency. It's being tested in a laboratory on calibrated machines, and the people undertaking those tests are competent to do those particular tests as well.
Okay, that's all. I think we are concluding the questions. Thank you, Mr. Lee, and we are ending up our CPD talk now. Thank you for your time, and Mr. Ladin, thank you for your help and coordination with Mr. Lee to have this session. I think I'm sure we are using UK case in this part of the world regularly, but it is further I can see a scope to develop and improve the quality of construction system in rebar and all the steel elements. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sama.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you all, and thank you once again for our sponsors of today, Tech Assistant. Thank you again. Bye.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers. Cheers. Bye. Good evening. Bye.
Bye. Bye.